Okay, hello, welcome for wherever you are in the world. I'm in Scotland in South Lanarkshire, and autumn's kicking in, I think. There's a chill in the air, but it was nice and sunny, kind of that cold, sunny feel today, and I really enjoyed that when I was out having a wee walk. So welcome. So I'm Neil. I work as an editor for Wild Goose, and I work with the wonderful, amazing, incredible Sandra Kramer, the publishing manager, the wonderful, amazing Jane Darroch Riley, who does marketing and other creative things for us, and the wonderful, amazing, incredible Iona Community, who does admin for us, and she also is doing the Zoom mastering thing, and we appreciate that very much, Iona. So welcome to this launch of Hold On, Let Go. And there's the cover. I hope you can see the cover. It's an amazing, beautiful drawing by Malcolm Downey, and he also does the illustrations inside the book, which are have a beautiful simplicity to them, I think. And it's hard to find a beautiful simplicity. I think the writing in the book has a beautiful simplicity too, and that's what I really like about the writing. And that's just so hard to do, or it takes a while to find that art and to pare things down. So I'll read the blurb of the book, just to give you the blurb, and I'll tell you a bit about the authors, and then I'll hand things over to the authors. So the blurb of the beautiful book is: every day is freighted with baffling questions about pain and love, about joy and purpose. In an age when we're shy of certainty and suspicious of authority, many of us no longer turn to the great houses of faith for inspiration. But for all we've let go, there's so much to hold on to. Drawing on wisdom from the ages and insights from the everyday, this deeply human collection of daily readings is the ideal traveling companion on the bumpy road to peace, love, and understanding. Less of a how-to book than a try this book, Hold On, Let Go, is about keeping your feet on the sacred earth and taking wing at the same time. Malcolm grew up under the flight path for Heathrow Airport. He studied fine art at St. Martin's School of Art before pursuing a writing career in journalism, advertising, and broadcasting. He has produced words for factual TV, radio, magazines, newspapers, and written 10 books. He is a contributor to BBC Radio 2's Pause for Thought and Radio 4's Something Understood. In his mid-50s, he was ordained as a priest in the Church of England and volunteers at his parish church in Suffolk. He describes himself as an agnostic Christian. He has recently returned to art practice, having moved to coastal Suffolk and had 2 solo exhibitions in 2022. He's married to writer and curator Meryl, and they have 2 grown-up children. And Martin is married to Meg, a painter. Together, they have been raised by 3 children. He got into journalism while studying theology and ended up on the staff of The Independent and later The Observer. He has had long-time collaborations with the Greenbelt Arts Festival, the human rights NGO Amos Trust, and the rock band U2. He contributes to BBC Radio 4's Thought for the Day, is an associate member of the Iona Community, and a while back accidentally became an Anglican priest. He was late to understand that religions are poems and tries to write one most days. His most recent book of poems is, and I'm not going to tell you the title of Martin's recent book of poems because it's going to be a skill testing question where you can win a free book later if you give me the title, and we'll get to that eventually. So I'll hand things over now to Malcolm and Martin. Welcome to you both.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Well, here we are. It's a delight to be with you. I'm sitting here in Suffolk, and Martin is in Holloway in North London. These are the kind of conversations we have across a distance quite often. But we're first, our thanks to Wild Goose for publishing this book, which we're really chuffed about. So I don't, Martin, I don't know whether you anything to offer straight away.
No, I second everything you've just said. It's excellent. Yeah.
Maybe we'll read a couple of things if that's okay. But maybe it's worth saying first that one of the things that prompted us to write this was that we know, as most people do know, more people who don't go to church than people who do. But the people who don't go to church are often more profoundly spiritual and thoughtful and philosophical and poetic than the church often allows for, and it's for people like that, I think, that we wrote this book as a kind of, not as a bridge so much, but as an invitation to explore this sort of territory. Martin?
Yeah, definitely. I particularly think of younger people who don't have much of an affinity with the institutions, but like the rest of us, are looking for some kind of authentic spiritual path to make their way through life. And we hope this book offers some clues. Well,
let's start. I'll read for you, if you don't mind, the very first of the entries in this book. You will see that they are quite short. This one's one of the shortest. And that's one of the ideas about this, is you don't necessarily start at the front and work through to the back. You can kind of dip in and out as you wish. So this piece is called Greet the Day. How many mornings will we get? No one can tell. The accident of birthplace has a say on the number of our days. But roughly speaking, we might find the sun rising and peeking through our curtains about 26,000 times. Most of those days we will never remember, and a few we will never forget. Nearly a century ago, the poet and children's author Eleanor Fargen wrote "Morning Has Broken," a hymn which captures a sense of gratitude for a new day. She imagined the first morning in Eden, with Adam and Eve taking in the bird song, the dew on the grass, the breaking light. Much later, the hymn became a pop hit for Cat Stevens, who continued to perform it under his new name, Yusuf Islam, after converting to Islam. Whether we give God a name or whether we don't, giving thanks is a good way to start the day. What might happen on any given day? No one can tell. Every day is a surprise. All we can know for sure is that as each new morning breaks, she is there again. She is ours.
But this is a slightly different one. It's a little bit longer, but I won't read the whole thing. And it's kind of relevant to, if you've been following the news in the last 24 hours, and the UK Prime Minister's latest decisions on the climate emergency. So this goes: there are moments in history when we are so incensed at the direction our politicians want to take us that all we can do is take to the streets. Moments when national leaders act only in national interest, while the challenges of our shared planet can only be faced with global collaboration. At this point, even the politically shy and retiring decide that their only course of action is to hold high a handwritten slogan in the company of fellow discontents. I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I am changing the things I cannot accept. But how come so many people seem to be protesting the same things after so many years of protesting those things? The climate emergency, institutional racism, LGBT plus rights, gender equality. Critics claim that demonstrations are incoherent and naive, against the patriarchy in favor of rainbows, against tanks in favor of flowers. But the patriarchy is resilient, like racism and homophobia, like hatred of Jews or hatred of Muslims. As one placard put it in 2017, I can't believe I still have to protest this fucking shit. The sentiment was borrowed from a young black woman protesting racism in 2014, half a century after the dawn of the civil rights movement. Occasionally, a great uprising of people power ignites dramatic political change, like the fall of the Berlin Wall. More likely, say the cynics, mass protest movements are just virtue signaling, a way of saying to like-minded people that you're on their team. When did the Occupy movement achieve the reform of capitalism? But viewing the efficacy of mass protest in short-term policy shifts is not the only lens to use. Asked how he wished to be remembered, the neurologist Oliver Sacks said he'd like it to be thought that he had listened carefully to what patients and others had told him. To use a biblical term, he said, he'd like it to be thought that he bore witness. Sacks understood the significance of bearing witness to the lives of others, often those ostracized or ignored. The most powerful uprisings of public disquiet or longing for social change are not those which are simply about standing up for people, but those which are about standing alongside people, standing with people when the march is over, people where we live or work. Elie Wiesel lost his sister and mother in Auschwitz and his father at Buchenwald. His memoir, Night, is about his first night in a camp. Those moments, he said, that murdered my God and my soul and turned my dreams to ashes forever. Wiesel spent much of the rest of his life with Holocaust survivors and came to see his role as a witness, to guard against history repeating itself. To listen to a witness, he said, is to become a witness, and that consoles us. How effective is our protest? You may never know what results come of your actions, said Gandhi, but if you do nothing, there will be no results.
This is a piece about physicality, really. It's called Remember You Are Dust. We are physical creatures in a physical universe. We're made of matter, but we're not merely material. We're also mind and soul and spirit, and we are bodies on earth. Earth. The word is rich, crumbly, fertile, organic, alive. It's solid, dependable, firm, foundational, nutritional. You can grow in earth, build with it, shape it and fire it, tunnel through it, hollow it out. The earth is our home. We are earthy, grounded, rooted people. This makes our bodies significant. They will not be dismissed as temporary shells for the soul to travel in, as if the soul or spirit was the real thing and the body simply packaging. There's an inclination, says the psychologist Guy Claxton in The Wayward Mind, to think that our souls are a buried scrap of divinity, the immaculate memento of God's glory, which he has hidden in every human heart. The soul or spirit can't be divorced from the rest of who we are. What we are is who we are. In the same way, we are joined with the air we breathe, the food we eat, the culture that nurtures us, the families who raise us, and, some would say, the divinity within us. Our identities are embodied, embedded, incarnated. It's because we are earthed that place, genes, family, ethnicity, nation, culture, and friendship are elemental to us. We are each and together an ineffable bundle of feeling and thinking, of urge and instinct, of appetite and emotion and gut instinct, which defy reason. We are mysterious, moving receivers responding to mystical stimuli in the cycles and rhythms of nature. We are in tune with something we know we don't know. The poet Wordsworth understood this. He wrote, "A presence that disturbs me with the joy of elevated thoughts, a sense sublime of something far more deeply interfused, a motion and a spirit that impels all thinking things, all objects of all thought, and rolls through all things." So maybe the earth has soul too. Perhaps the wind and rain, the moon and sun are closer than we know. In which case we might remember, as Christians recite in the liturgy of Ash Wednesday, "You are dust, and to dust you shall return." If soul, spirit, mind, body, and earth are so entangled, why the distinction between flesh and spirit, between secular and sacred? Being alive is to transcend those boundaries.
Thanks. My friend has just texted saying he couldn't get in, so I'm going to send him another link. I'll just read one more, and then perhaps if people have got some questions or objections, you could raise them and we'll address them. Mm-hmm. So this is called Gaze at the Beauty. And you can see me now because I worked out how to turn the light on. Gaze at the beauty. Gaze at the beauty of the green earth, said the philosopher and mystic Hildegard of Bingen 900 years ago. Now, think. We've been thinking ever since, and somewhere between then and now, some of our thoughts became dangerous. We began to think of Earth as a resource, a tank to drain, a forest to raise, a home to ransack. But Hildegard was suggesting a contrary notion, the kind that Francis of Assisi had a century or so later, when he talked of Brother Sun and Sister Moon, when he mused on Sister Water, Brothers Wind and Air, of Mother Earth. Francis wasn't thinking of Earth as a resource, but as a relative. If that thought might have been unremarkable in earlier Aboriginal cultures, today it's been marginalized. We've moved from a relational view of this universe to an instrumental view, from Earth as holy ground to building site, from ecstatic to extractive. Perhaps population movements to the city accelerated this, obscuring our experience of the shifting season captured in fields and trees, shrinking our sense of how we all spring from this earth and autumn into it. The interdependence between us and this earth, how all of life connects. Thinking this through, the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh coined the word interbeing to capture the interconnectedness of everything. How this planet is a living, breathing cell. How we do not live in nature, but we are nature. Sister Dorothy Stang moved from the US to live amongst the poorest peoples in Brazil's Amazon basin. She ran schools and studied Brazilian law as a way of supporting local forest dwellers in their stand against corporations exploiting the Amazon. Wearing a t-shirt which read, "The death of the forest is the end of our lives," Dot wouldn't be silenced even in the face of death threats. Local farmers, she said, want to live and work with dignity while respecting the environment. In February 2005, when she was walking alone in the jungle, 2 gunmen came out of the bushes. Opening her Bible, she started reading the Beatitudes to them. Blessed are the poor. She was shot dead at 73 years of age. Some people have called Sister Dot the patron saint of Extinction Rebellion. At her funeral, a local farmer stood up and said, "Sister Dot, we are not burying you, we are planting you." If we think of Earth as relation, not resource, we think of all life differently. Humanity, take a good look at yourself, said Hildegard way back when. Inside, You've got heaven and earth and all of creation. You're a world. Everything is hidden in you. Gaze at the beauty of the green earth. Now, think. Thank you. That's probably enough of those for now.
Thank you very much, Malcolm and Martin. That was beautiful and powerful. Okay, if you can tell me the name of Martin's poetry collection on Wild Goose, you can win a free copy of Hold On, Let Go or Martin's poetry collection. So if you email me that title, see, very simple, just email me that title at Neil, N-E-I-L, at ionabooks.com. The very first person with the correct answer, I will let you, we will give you a free book. Isn't that good? It's easy, easy.
Excellent offer.
Yeah, excellent. So Neil, N-E-I-L, at ionabooks.com. So we'll open to some questions, or if anyone wants to make any comments. We'll look around for, raised hands or that kind of thing. I have a question for, just to start, for the two of you. How do you write a book together? That must be an incredible thing to write a book with your friend. It must be such a privilege, and you must grow so close doing that, and sharing souls. And how does the back and forth work? How did you kind of, how do you work that? Anything you can say about that?
Well, I
Yeah, I
don't
guess I could
like
start.
him.
Oh, sorry. Do you want to go, Mark?
No, I'm saying we're not friends at all. No, we are. So carry on. Sorry, Martin, I interrupted you.
Well, I was just going to say, I feel very lucky because if you're a writer, well, anybody involved in creating things, it's really good to have someone who can improve you, can look at your work dispassionately but compassionately, and say, yeah, that's not bad, but have you thought of this? Or that's a bit long, or that doesn't make sense. And if you trust someone, it really helps to improve your work, because if you trust their judgment, as I trust Malcolm's judgment, I find my own work improves.
Right, and they're being honest with you, but they're doing it with love. Yeah.
And respect. I think that's very important. I think that it's very useful in us in that we are quite different. In that, Martin's a kind of big blue sky thinker, a sort of Aaron Sorkin. Who's the guy who wrote West Wing, and I'm Alan Bennett. So I'm not. so that's quite a nice little thing. Also, Martin's often a starter, and where I'm a finisher. So he'll have an idea, and it comes beautiful but half formed, and so then I kind of pick it up and work on it a bit. It didn't always work that way, because often an example of the one that I just read was the one about Remember You Are Dust, which is, I had an idea and I started working on it, but it was just an idea, and Martin then filled in some really good extra stuff. I think it started because we both have a kind of journalistic background, and we both got a bit bored with our own company, and we thought, well, let's do some stuff together. And so we edited magazines and wrote things and found that compatibility through doing that sort of
for about 10 years we edited a magazine for the UK government called Developments, which was for the late lamented Department for International Development. So we would often travel in countries where the economies were still emerging, or countries in transition, and write about education or about health or about employment, sometimes quite sort of technical, I was going to say plain areas, and together we were able to make the content interesting, because our task was to try and show the reader that international development works, contrary to the traditional notion that it's wasted. So we did that for about 10 years, and I think that's where we kind of honed our writing relationship.
Yeah, I suppose I suppose it's very like writing a song with somebody, writing music with somebody. There's a strength in that. You can rely on each other's, you get to trust each other, what you can do, what somebody can start, somebody can finish. The Lennon McCartney thing.
Yeah.
Not sure what those I am, but
or John Bell and Graham Moore.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, John Graham Bell. Well, God bless them. I miss them.
Yeah.
Anyone out there have a question or comment? Anything you want to say? Jane, I saw first.
You're still on mute, Jane.
Oh, I was just curious about the images, because I love like what you described as the faux naive style of them. And I wondered if there was any of the images that were a prompt before the writing, or they all came after the writing, or whether there was just like some drawing that you had in your desk that you thought, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Like the word picture relationship is one that always really interests me.
Well, I think in this case, it was the words that came first, because we had to convince ourselves that we had a book, and so we worked through the texts, and then I then looked through those pieces and let them kind of compost a bit, and try and find an image that made sense. I didn't always want to do an obvious sort of, picture of the story kind of thing, but just something that bounced off it. I mean, it's different because I'm a painter too. So when I paint, it goes the other way round, when the images come first. And yeah.
No, I was the contrast between the painted cover and the simplicity of the line drawings I really love. It's almost like you're going behind the little birdhouse and you're seeing what's behind it. But were you tempted to do like full on like paintings, or you always had in your idea, no, like for the work, for the inside, it's got to be the simple line?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's the simplicity that I like, and I've always admired people like Picasso and David Hockney who do that very simple walking line, which tells its own story, and that worked for me, because you've got words which are kind of complex, and you're kind of forming an argument, then to have something that's much simpler in terms of the drawing worked.
It made me think of David Shrigley a bit too. Just the kind of like, because often at the end of each piece, there's these very, to me, quite complex, deep thoughts where your kind of mind wanders off, but you always bring it back around at the end of each section to a really simple summation, like a sort of one line thought, like that just, and then it goes to the image, which is really simple. And I think that's one of the things that I really loved about this book, that you go really deep and then you come back up to the surface. So you never feel like you're left with this kind of like, oh, I don't quite understand that. You always get to a place where you're like, oh, okay, I can go here.
Yeah. I always felt, reading through that the writing had a clear line to it and the art has a clear line to it. And I just love a clear line in general. If anyone wants to see Malcolm's paintings, I think your website is www.malcolmdowney.co.uk. Is that right? Sort of? Yeah.
That's good. It's not entirely up to date. If any of you do Instagram, I post my paintings as I do them, on Instagram, and I think it's Malcolm.Doney7. But if you just sort of put Malcolm Doney in the search, I'll pop up. So there is actually one. I just did a painting which was actually inspired by one of the drawings in the book. There's one of them. I can't remember what the one's called, but there was a picture of a dice, and which is a very simple line drawing, and I've just done a painting of it. So there you go.
And then I have
Any
a
other
question for Martin as well. I've got 2 questions. I'm hogging all the questions tonight. Right. So Martin, because I knew you first as a poet, was it hard? Is it harder to write prose or harder to write poetry? And were you tempted to throw some poems in here?
Well, I think I might have dumped one in actually. But the good thing about getting older, generally, I find, as a principle, is that you're starting to compress your life and you're trying to shed stuff because you realize, what did I collect all this stuff for? And it's a bit of a hassle, but you are slowly getting rid of stuff. And the same is true, I think, in writing and certainly in poetry. I've been writing poetry a long time, but the older I get, the shorter the poems get, which is a relief for my listeners and readers. But also this book's a good example actually, because Malcolm and I originally did a sort of a bigger, more lavish edition of this through a crowdfunding editorial site called Unbound about 5 years ago, and it was a big full color hardback, and I think it cost about £20. They did about 2 print runs, did very well, but then they stopped. And we had quite a lot of comments from people saying they were using it as daily readings, or they were using it every night, or in little groups, reading groups. And we sort of realized this book had a life beyond that book. But with this edition, we realized we needed to compress things and freshen it up and rewrite it. So I'll always be prouder of this one than the previous one, because this one feels like it's found itself. The other one probably in retrospect was a little bit baggy. So who knows, in a few years we might do a tinier version of this one.
I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Anyone else out there would like to say something or ask anything? I'm just looking around on Zoom, scrolling through, taking a look.
Go on from
Nice,
Judy.
beautiful faces.
Hi, hello. Pardon me for being late. Like you, Martin, I'm very old, so I forget things. But I was just curious to know how you share the writing process. So, Martin, do you write the words and send them to Malcolm, and he puts lots of red pen all over it, and vice versa?
Yeah, we were saying it's a sort of a bit of a dance, and either of us might start and the other might finish. But in principle, I'm more of a starter and Malcolm's more of a finisher. So I'll often send an idea, and without saying it, Malcolm realizes I've lost interest, and he picks it up and completes the race.
Do you ever have a go at drawing?
No, I can't do that actually. No, I mean, who's to say? But no, I haven't. Yeah.
But then I've never really been a poet. I mean,
Yeah.
I think I have my poetic side, but
You do.
and poetry is not foreign to me. But so there's another kind of, I don't know, yin and yang or something or other.
Yeah, it's interesting because Malcolm and I both, even though we've been friends for 100 years, we both late in life had this hunch maybe we could train as priests and do it, as volunteers. And so we kind of did it almost at the same time, at the same place, without realizing we were both going to do it. And over the years, we used to experiment with each other's talks, swapping talks. And our objective all the time, certainly mine anyway, was how can we keep these people interested?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously brevity is part of that. But having a background in journalism means you're drawn to a good story, and you know that you're privileged to have anybody listen to you or read you. So why would you allow them to think, I'm not staying? You would just want to keep them with you the whole time, which does require, quite a bit of work. So, but over the years, I mean, if we're doing it, I don't know if Malcolm would agree with this. If I'm writing a talk for a Sunday, I'll probably start it on the Monday, and I'm still cutting it down on Sunday morning, because in the end, the shorter the better.
Yeah, Martin was saying his poems get shorter. My talks get shorter too. But I think that also is from what Martin's saying is that where you start's very important. I agree with him. Is that nobody has any obligation to listen to you or to read what you write. So we feel it's our job is to get your attention and to say we think this is worth thinking about. So the opening sentences, the opening paragraph is always very important to us, because that helps people in. And particularly when you're doing talks, for example, you often have to surprise people, because if you start with, as it says in the Bible, you've lost most of the congregation immediately. But if you say, I was hit by a cat the other day, then suddenly people are with you. And I think those kind of things are really very important. Yeah. And I would add to that, I think also is that we really don't like cant or cliche, because people trot that stuff out all the time, particularly in religious speak. And it's our bounden duty not to allow that to happen.
Who's your sorry, I'm butting in now. I just who is your ideal reader? If both of you could give a copy of this to somebody, who would it be?
Well, there was go on, Malcolm.
Oh, sorry, you froze there, Martin.
Okay.
Well, I don't have an ideal reader. I mean, I think the both of us are really interested in people, those kind of people who might wander into a church and sit down and then leave as soon as the service begins. And I think that's often what we want to do. So people are alive to the idea of the sacred, let's say, or to the fact that there's more going on than we know about. But they don't really want it to be over-constructed or weighed down by words or dogma or that kind of thing. It's those people who we are most sympathetic to.
Yeah. It's become a certain cliche, but it is essentially people who might say, if they use that language, that they're spiritual, not religious.
My mother is reading it now as a daily reading book. She's 97 and she can't get to church, but she said something like it helps her to think about things in life or something like that. So,
well, we could put
I know what you mean.
We could put that quote on the cover of the next edition.
That'd be good along with Bono. Yeah, that'd be good.
Neil's mum. Yeah.
Neil's mum. Yeah.
Yeah. I think when I searched through the other day, the word moment comes up a lot. Moment and living in the moment, and that idea of living in the moment. And that's helped reading through the book, working on the book. That's helped me to remember something I really forget and I need some practice at, and I'm not so good at sometimes, but I'm very good at sometimes. So I thank you for that.
Well, that's for me, Neil, that's very much a note to self. It's a thing I talk about all the time, about how important it is to live in the moment, but I find it almost impossible.
Yeah.
I live in my head a lot, and a lot of it's working out what's happening next. So while I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm thinking, what is it I've got to do downstairs when I finish here, and that, and that does destroy the moment. But so I try to hold on to that.
Does anyone out there listening have any help for me to live better in the moment? Anything you found that helps you?
Sorry.
Just before I came on, I was reading the section on failure. And I thought that was ideal for the school assembly, for the top end of the school, the sort of year 10s and 11s, not at the time of exams, but perhaps earlier in the year.
Yeah.
And I thought there's probably quite a few bits in there that would lend themselves to young people, particularly in assemblies.
Yeah,
well, that would be great.
Yeah, I was at a school governors meeting yesterday and read something, and one of the teachers said, "Oh, I could use that in assembly next week." So same principle. I think this relates to an earlier question. My feeling is I've always wanted the book to be something that I could give to someone who doesn't necessarily think they've got a sort of religious narrative, but maybe they do, because maybe everybody does. And it might be something that they find warm and engaging and maybe inspiring sometimes, but makes them think twice about what's happening in life, really.
My only complaint is it's too wide. It doesn't fit easily into the pocket. If it had been printed an inch narrower, I could carry it around and give it away.
It is possible to get bigger pockets.
But thank you for that. That's very encouraging.
Yeah.
Not about the pockets, but the other stuff about that's using assemblies. That's great.
Thanks, Jim. That was great. Anyone else have anything else to add before we kind of wrap it up? It was really, I really enjoyed the evening during the readings. Thanks for everyone. And thank you very much for Malcolm and Martin for reading. Thanks for everyone for coming. Thanks for everyone who supports Wild Goose, who buys Wild Goose books, who writes for us, if anyone's there. We're a small publisher, so if you buy a book, it really helps. And it's www.ionabooks.com. The website.
Shall I read it? Sorry, Martin.
I was just going to add that Neil and Sandra are pretty brilliant to work with when you're making a book. They're
Absolutely.
just ideal companions.
It's really nice of you. Thanks.
I know it's been great working with you. It's very good. I thought I'd end off by reading a very short one of these.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Fear not, Martin. Is that all right?
Yeah.
It's kind of sort of, I don't know, doxology or a blessing or something. So, fear not. Fear comes in all shapes and sizes. It's at the heart of what it means to be human. The fear of the unknown or of the known. The fear of not being in control. The fear of missing out. The fear of taking part. The fear of loving. The fear of not loving. The fear of losing love. The fear of not being good enough. The fear of someone else at work or on the street. The fear of illness. The fear of death. The fear of never having lived. We all carry fears, however secretly, however much we deny them. Maybe it's some primal survival instinct, but the suspicion is that we're never quite safe and secure. If we cannot banish our fears, we can make sure they don't banish us. We don't have to be managed by fear and insecurity. There is no more common phrase in the Bible than "have no fear," or this: "do not be afraid." Fear not. But how? The only way to ease our fear and be truly happy, said the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, is to acknowledge our fear and look deeply at its source. Instead of trying to escape from our fear, we can turn to it. We can look at it clearly and deeply. Fear makes us defensive, turns us in on ourselves. Its opposite is not courage, but love. Love accepts, includes, is symbolized by open arms. There is no fear in love, said the early Christian writer John, but perfect love casts out fear.
Good ending. Thank you. Thanks to everyone out there. Hope you have a good evening. We're going to continue making paella here. Take care, all of you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great to be here.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. And just a quick note to say that this was just a wee introductory session almost. We will be posting other things, so check us out on our Instagram, on our Facebook, on our very occasional Twitter, because there's so many gems in this book. And while we don't want to give too much away, we will be putting out more little things, so look out for them because they're lovely.
Night.
Good night.
Thanks. Night.
Much as everybody.